You think you can just walk away from this? Her voice cut through the stale gymnasium air, low and sharp, echoing across the fold-out chairs. I know what you did. You never deserved him any of this. He gripped the folder tighter, knuckles bone-white, glancing at his son, who hovered by the door with eyes wide as headlights. You don't want to do this right here, she hissed, mouth curled into a hard, practiced smile. I'm not the one who hid a family's truth for 30 years, he shot back, his voice a notch above a whisper but ringing clear. Her hand flicked toward the brass shell on the mantel, metallic scrape slicing the tension. You ever think maybe you were never family at all? He took a half-step closer, pulse humming in his throat. You won't scare me out, not this time. She dug her nails into her palm, but her mask faltered. I already have. The room seemed to tremble with the threat in her words, silence stretching. Long before these walls echoed with secrets, everything started on a rainless August roadside, before either of them suspected just how deep the lies would run. The last thing Matt expected that Tuesday was to be sitting on the warped timber bench of a shuttered roadside cafe, 47 cents to his name, plastic tarp-wrapped duffel at his feet, and his son Jamie ate, gap-toothed and hungry, kicking pebbles nearby while the world felt like it was flipping inside out. 2 weeks ago, his shop, Miller & Son Carpentry, had lost the Wallace contract. His crew called for paychecks he couldn't write. Then Rachel, his wife, packed 3 boxes and said she needed time to breathe. Time turned out to be a one-way bus ticket to Boise with no forwarding address. Now the law firm letter in his hand, stamped with a swirling ancestor's crest, might as well have been a bill. He cracked the envelope, heart thudding, as Jamie huffed, "Can we go yet, Dad?" "Just a minute, buddy." Matt had learned to keep his face neutral for Jamie's sake. He scanned the page, attorney letterhead, name spelled right. It named him as the sole beneficiary of a collapsed timber cabin in the Oregon Cascades, Prospector's Ruin. The very one his father, Big Russ, had always joked was a fable, nothing gold about it except the rats. "They left you a shack, really." Jamie wrinkled his nose, reading over his shoulder. Apparently, Matt laughed without humor, folding the paper to hide the empty feeling in his chest. That was it. A piece of worthless land no one in their right mind wanted. Even the lawyer's closing line sounded like a dare. The property must be claimed before Friday's sheriff's auction, or all rights will revert. That old place up near Beartooth Road, thought it burned in the forest fires, spat the woman at the cafe counter, pouring burnt coffee into a mug. "I heard your brother's widow is bidding for it." She gave him the kind of smile that knew good stories stank. Jamie nudged the duffel with his sneaker. "Dad, you really gonna keep it?" "It's all I got to keep," Matt muttered, trying to summon up some fierce pride or at least enough stubbornness to drive 100 twisting miles east. He'd always been the quiet one, steady, not the sort to stir family drama. But something in the way Rachel's sister, Wendy, had laughed on the phone when she heard about Matt's grand haul wouldn't let him just walk away. He caught sight of a second envelope inside, this one cracked and yellowed, addressed by hand to R.W. Miller Jr. for when it's time. He ran his thumb across the seal. "If you've ever had to gamble everything on a shot nobody else believed in, stay with me. Because that was the moment I decided losing quietly wasn't an option." The drive up from the Texas Panhandle to Oregon didn't start auspiciously. Matt's old Chevy S10 clattered and whined, the U-Haul trailer fishtailing on slick shoulders as low clouds skated above the evergreens. The further they climbed into Clackamas County, the deeper the woods grew, branches gnawed at the August mist, the world outside dim and tight as a coffin. Jamie pressed his forehead to the window. "Looks like Bigfoot country," he said, only half joking. "Sasquatch wouldn't last a week in a place like this," Matt answered and tried to grin. Fog beaded along the glass, white noise from the tires filling long silences. Memory pressed in during the bends, images of his father, boots muddy, big hands wrapping a cedar beam, laughter loud enough to make the barn shake. No matter how hard Matt worked, he'd always been Russ's kid, not like the others. His brother Pete had married Wendy in '94. Wendy never seemed to know how to talk to Matt, unless it was to needle him about his small jobs and smaller ambitions. They passed Beartooth Road, gravel cloaked in moss. At the crest, an old mail route shack still listing on its side marked the turn. Matt parked by a rusted, slumped mailbox. The air was cool, a distant pine needle sweetness drifting in. He stepped out, boots crunching, Jamie trailing close. The prospector's dream sign, still bolted over the weather-warped door, threatened to fall in the wind. Matt let Jamie slide the key into the lock, almost didn't expect it to turn, but the latch gave with a groan. Inside, the dust hit first, damp, heavy, the smell of bark and old stone, plus something metallic beneath. "Let's do this quick," Jamie whispered, clutching his backpack, eyes wide at the strange shadows. The first step onto the creaking pine floorboards filled Matt with a cold clarity. No gold, no glory, just odd tokens. A faded cornflower blue velvet couch, a cracked mantel above a stony hearth, an artillery shell standing upright, polished to a dull shine, the only thing not gray with dust. Jamie tugged at his sleeve. Why would someone keep a shell like that on a fireplace? Matt shook his head, tracing the ridges. Sometimes folks hide things where no one's looking. A sudden flash in the window glass, something white wedged under the sash. Jamie darted across, pried it out, and waved over. "Dad, there's a letter in here too." Matt turned, heart thumping harder. He closed the shell with a dull clang. "We're not going anywhere yet." The shell was heavier than it looked. Brass, hollowed, screws at the bottom faint and worn as if someone had opened it once, then resealed it, not wanting prying eyes. Matt wiped the grime off, loading it under his arm as Jamie bounced on the couch. "Dad, the couch is full of springs and old coins," Jamie called, rooting with both hands. Matt twisted one of the shell's screws, clink. The metal collar slid open, revealing a rolled oilskin pouch tucked deep inside. His fingers tingled, anticipation and dread twining. Jamie watched, silent for once, as Matt gingerly unwound the pouch's laces. A spray of crowns, no, tiaras, delicate tracery of gold and gems spilled on the dust-blotched table, so vivid their colors seemed to burn. Each piece belonged to a different era. Victorian, chased in tiny leaves. Edwardian, studded with sapphires. Art Deco, all sharp lines and diamonds. Even an enamel ruby band fit for a czarina. Jamie let out a breathless, like a treasure chest, "Dad." Matt touched a rose-cut diamond. A slip of parchment, barely bigger than his palm, fell out. He unfolded it. The handwriting matched the second envelope. The text read, "Russ, you wanted better for your boy. If he's reading this, it means the time's come. Forgive what's been hidden. The real gift's not these trinkets, but what they keep safe. Uncle Henry." Matt swallowed. It wasn't possible, was it? He pressed a thumb to the creased signature, Uncle Henry, Dad's uncle, who everyone whispered about but never named outright. Jamie peered over his shoulder, eyes darting. "Is that a will?" "Something like that," Matt replied, voice thin. The truth, for the first time, felt inches from his fingertips. They heard tires on gravel outside. Not Wendy, not this far up, surely. But Matt moved fast, gathering the pouch, stuffing it deep into his tool bag. This was the moment everything shifted. Morning broke as a dull bruise on the horizon, rain finally needling down through the canopy. Matt packed the tiaras again, sweat prickling as he replayed the letter's closing lines. When they climbed inside the truck, careful to tuck the shell low in the footwell, Jamie murmured, "Where to now?" "Town Records Office, then the real estate lawyer down in Moscow Station. We need to find out what else Dad never told us." The rain hissed on the windshield as they wound down Beartooth Road, both silent. Matt's mind ticked through what-ifs. Who else knew about the treasures? Could he trust what Uncle Henry wrote? Part of him worried they just unearthed a family curse, not a solution. Downtown, the Clackamas County Clerk's office was a flat box of flickering lights and institutional linoleum. But the woman at the counter, Miss Barr, greeted them with a tired sort of patience Matt recognized. "Here for a property claim, are you?" she drawled, skimming his papers. "You know these old cabins, they're usually more trouble than they're worth." The words didn't sting as much as they used to. He handed her the hand-addressed envelope and parchment. "You mind checking if my name's registered as rightful owner? I think something big got missed." Miss Barr squinted at the crest. She made a call, her side of the conversation clipped and low. "Yes, Brenda. No, it's not Wendy. It's Matthew Miller. No, he has more than just the deed." She turned the monitor for him to see. Family tree charts, birth dates, cross-reference names, highlighted rows. "Did you know you're not just next of kin on Russ's side?" she asked, voice unusually gentle. "You're listed as legal heir to the Parsons estate. That's a different lineage going back to Judge Parsons' early railroad, huge land holdings. They've been looking for you for nearly 10 years. No one thought you'd turn up in person." Matt's knees went hollow. He thought of his mother's face, always tense when family money got mentioned, and realized she'd never once told him about Parsons' blood, a whole hidden branch. At that moment, the door banged open. Wendy stood in the doorway, rain spraying from her coat, a hard, brittle smile perched on her mouth. She saw Matt, the oilskin pouch, and the shell on the counter. "So you figured it out after all," she said, drawing out the words. Matt barely had the breath to answer. The deadline pressed down hard over lunch. A full-screen county website glared from the monitor. Sheriff's auction, 48 hours remaining. Jamie kicked his chair leg, gnawing his thumbnail. Matt dialed the number Miss Barr scrawled, Clackamas County Historical Society Archival Office. The receiver clicked, a man's voice answered. "This is Frank Dobson, Society Director," he said, words clipped, the kind that didn't waste syllables. "This is Matt Miller. I'm in line to lose my family's cabin at auction, but I found objects in the structure that—" Frank Dobson interrupted. "If these are authentic heirlooms and if your lineage checks out, that property's not just a shack, that's a national relic. We've pursued this for years, but we're blocked on all claims until now." Jamie leaned into the phone. "Is it worth a lot, sir?" Frank chuckled. "Son, some of those collections have been appraised in the hundreds of millions, and that's not counting historical significance." Matt's hands shook. "So what does it mean for me?" he whispered. Frank lowered his voice. "Your claim as an heir trumps auction. You need to file an injunction before the sale closes tomorrow, otherwise anyone, including other claimants, can bid outright." Wendy's tone sharpened. "You're wasting your time, Matt. You never understood how these things work." Frank snapped. "And you, ma'am, you say you're a widow, but you have no registered linkage." Wendy's lips thinned, but she didn't respond. Frank directed, "I'll email the forms and send my assistant in person to the property for verification within the hour. Protect everything. Do not let anyone remove items." Matt signed off, fighting a tremor. The plan solidified in his mind. Action, not hope, would move this forward. Jamie whispered, "Dad, are we rich now?" Matt answered, "Maybe, but we can't let our guard down yet." Thunder rolled, the sky darkening to a slate promise. Time was running out. Matt stuffed the pouch, correspondence, and the shell into a lockbox he'd found under the cabin's eaves. As he deadbolted the door, Wendy circled up the porch behind him. "You really think you're going to take this from me?" she snarled. "You were never even a real Miller, not to Russ, not to anyone. He only loved you because you reminded him of her." Matt steadied himself, feeling every slight from childhood bleeding into this moment. "That's not true. He cared plenty, you just never wanted to see it." Wendy's hands balled, nails whitening against her palms. "You have no idea what I had to do to keep that man happy. 30 years, Matt, 30, and all for what? For you to fall out of the sky and take everything." A gust rattled the windows. Jamie peered out from behind Matt's legs, frightened but determined. Wendy's voice fell to a hiss. You give up now, you could at least leave with your dignity, but if you keep pushing, you'll have nothing and so will your son. Matt's voice was calm. I've had nothing before, I know how to work with it. Wendy lunged, her hand seized the brass shell. You don't even know what's in here, do you? With a flash of old reflexes, Matt grabbed her wrist, wrenching the shell loose as Jamie squealed, Dad, watch out. Matt's carpenter's grip proved true, a twist, a snap, and the shell rolled into Jamie's waiting arms, its contents rattling ominously. Wendy staggered back, breath ragged. You think this buys you respect? No one will give you a second look, just like always. Matt stood firm, voice rising. I won't stoop to your level, not now. Across the room, Jamie quietly tucked the shell into his backpack, eyes following every move. Wendy stalked away, slamming the door, her anger poisoning the air. Matt's chest heaved, another round survived. But surviving wasn't enough, not this time. As dawn bleached the trees, Matt marched into the lawyer's office, Jamie at his side, notebook of evidence tucked under an arm. Frank Dobson was already there, bespectacled, thick folder in his grip, grave as a judge. Ready for the showdown? Frank asked, voice low. I can't let her win, not with what's at stake for Jamie. How do we make sure justice sticks? Matt's question felt heavier than any lumber he'd hauled. Frank nodded. Historical claim is unbreakable if we can confirm provenance. I'll present it to the auction committee, but you have to decide, do you want her charged, blacklisted, or something else? Matt swallowed, glancing at Jamie, who fiddled with his zipper, oblivious to the adult calculus swirling above his head. I want her to know, Matt said, the words surprising himself, that after all she did, I chose not to take everything away from her. But I want her out. Let her feel what it's like to be on the outside for a while. Frank's mouth tightened, but he offered his hand. That's a brave route. I'll draft an agreement. She signs away all rights, agrees never to challenge. She gets a stipend, but loses title access, any claim to the estate. And I want the estate turned into a veterans retreat center. My grandfather would have wanted that. That's my non-negotiable. Frank's eyes lit up, a rare warmth pushing through his poker face. Miller, that's the kind of legacy people write books about. Agreement in hand, they drove back for the final confrontation, with Jamie holding tight to the artillery shell and proof. The gymnasium at Drake Middle School, pressed into service that week as auction room for county property, reeked of floor wax and old popcorn. County officials, gray-suited bidders, a handful of kids sprawled in pews. Wendy stood by the wall, phone clutched tight, eyes trained on the auctioneer's table. Her lawyer hovered nearby, nervous. Matt entered, Jamie in tow, Frank pacing somberly behind. The noise dropped as they walked forward. Wendy caught sight of the lockbox, Frank's folder, and Jamie's backpack. Her face flickered with something like panic, but she straightened, sharp, dignified, ready to play for keeps. Matt stopped 3 feet from her, voice low, deliberate. You think you can just walk away from this, he said, locking eyes with her. His words were steel. Her mask didn't falter. I know what you did, you never deserved him any of this. Matt set the shell on the table. Jamie hovered behind him, as fixed as a pillar. You don't want to do this right here, Wendy whispered sidelong, daring him to blink. Not the one who hid a family's truth for 30 years, Matt murmured back, but it was enough. Lawyers, auction officials, even a cluster of town busybodies pressed closer, breathing the storm. Wendy's hand hovered over the shell, tapping its side with her fingernail, metallic, desperate. You ever think maybe you were never family at all? Matt's gaze burned. You won't scare me out, not this time. Her own composure cracked, a tremor passing through her jaw. For the first time, she looked small. Matt could see through her now, not a schemer, just another tired soul who resented loving the wrong way all her life. You already have, Wendy breathed, but her voice couldn't carry the same threat. Frank Dobson cleared his throat. According to these records and by the county's own succession law, Matthew Miller is the sole legal heir. These items, he produced the tiaras, glistening under the fluorescence, have been evaluated and claimed for cultural preservation. Any fraudulent claim or removal is a felony. Wendy's lawyer shifted, whispering in her ear, but Matt didn't move. The auctioneer announced, "This property is withdrawn from the sale, effective immediately. Miss Wendy Miller, you will sign the attached relinquishment. No further challenge permitted by county order. Failure to do so is grounds for permanent disbarment from future claims." Wendy stared at the paper, then at Matt. Time slowed, her anger flared and faded, the years between them sharper than any blade. Matt didn't feel triumph, just relief, as though something tightly wounded had finally been set down. "You don't have to be afraid anymore, Wendy," Matt said quietly, voice rough. "But you can't use this place to punish us either. It's over." Wendy's lip curled, but she picked up the pen. "You could ruin me," she spat, then paused, something in her breaking. "Why didn't you?" Matt met her gaze. "My son needs to see that there's a better way." Crowd noise swelled, the judge stamped the agreement, and Wendy faded back among the folding chairs, her dignity spent. Frank squeezed Matt's shoulder, Jamie's hand found his, and for the first time in years, Matt felt at home in his own skin. Clackamas County Historical Society released a statement. News vans crowded the drive-in lot that night, broadcasting the story of the Miller heir and the hidden fortune, the tiaras sparkling on velvet under bright camera lights. Wendy would move back downstate, living small, always watching for the other shoe to drop. The stipulation was clear: never speak of the claim, never step foot on Miller ground again. Matt made peace with not seeking more. He'd had enough of revenge. His own peace came in work, transforming the battered estate into a haven for wounded veterans, using the proceeds and the past as pillars for hope. Jamie helped run summer events, a kid with quiet pride. He told everyone about the crowns, not for their gems, but for who they honored. One morning, as paint dried on the sign, Miller Veterans Retreat, founded 2024, Frank joined Matt on the porch, mugs of black coffee warm between their hands. "You did right by a lot of people, Matt," Frank said, nodding at the volunteers hauling lumber. Matt smiled, watching Jamie race down the path with a pack of new friends. "Funny how sometimes you build something for someone else and end up fixing yourself." If you've ever wondered whether holding back is the same as losing, remember, not every victory is about what's kept, but what you set free when you choose mercy. In the hush of old woods and fresh-painted porches, that lesson echoed further than any secret ever could. Matt leaned against the porch rail, letting sunlight warm the scars on his hands. From the hill, the laughter of kids, Jamie and two others from Army families, rose and broke the quiet, joined by hammers and the low whir of an old saw. In the months since the auction, the place had changed. Trees trimmed, roof re-shingled, trails clear. If he let himself look close, he could almost see where the past ended and their future started. Inside the main hall, the old artillery shell, now empty, polished and mounted, stood beneath a glass case with the tiaras and Uncle Henry's note. Visitors stopped and stared, whispered, and every child dreamed for a moment that they might stumble onto a secret of their own. It was Jamie's idea to put up the display. "Gotta show people we built this from something that hurt," Jamie had declared, matter-of-fact one afternoon as he arranged a photograph of Big Russ in uniform beside the shell. Now, as Matt watched the boy, he marveled at how much strength could root in unlikely ground. For years, all he'd wanted was to keep Jamie safe from trouble. But trouble, it seemed, was sometimes just the beginning. Frank Dobson stepped out onto the porch, pad in hand, his tie askew. He'd become grandfatherly almost overnight, forever poking his head in to offer guidance or check on the guest list for the next retreat session. "Got a minute, Matt?" Frank waved him over, eyes sparkling beneath bushy brows. Matt nodded, feet crunching on the new pine boards, everything lining up for tomorrow. Frank grinned, waggling his pad. So far, so good. The governor's aide called to confirm they'll be here for the dedication. Says they're bringing a news crew this time. Going to let Jamie say a few words too. I think you've got a Miller heir who can talk circles around senators. Matt snorted, that'll be a sight. He looked out, lips twisting with a trace of nervousness. Part of me still expects it all to vanish. I wake up waiting for a knock on the door, someone telling me it's over. Frank's gaze softened. After everything Wendy pulled, doesn't surprise me. You did the rare thing, Matt. You let go of the bitterness but kept the worth. She'll do fine, you know, your mercy's more than most receive. Matt shrugged, emotion tightening his chest. I just wanted Jamie to learn there's more to winning than keeping score. They stood together as the afternoon lengthened, the sound of life all around them. For the first time, Matt allowed hope to settle deep, a steady undertone to the work, the laughter, the easy talk between new friends. Late that evening, as dusk bled over the pines, Jamie knelt on the porch step, fiddling with a battered harmonica one of the veterans had given him. He blew a shy, tremulous note, barely a melody, but it carried into the clearing where Matt hauled up the last boards for the shed. Jamie's face was set in concentration. Learning a new tune, Bud, Matt called, setting the lumber down with a grunt. Jamie shrugged, glancing up. Just practicing what Mac taught me. He said it helps with feelings, when things are quiet like today. Matt lowered himself beside his son, stretching tired legs along the step. Some days, quiet's what I want most. Jamie chewed his lip. Are you mad at Aunt Wendy still? Matt didn't answer at first. He thought of the stormy day in the gym, Wendy's flash of pride and pain, her signature trembling on the page. He doubted she would reach out. But rage, oddly, no longer held him, just an ache for what could never be fixed. No, kid, I don't think I am. I just hope, wherever she is, she finds some kind of peace, he said finally. Jamie nodded, picking out a scrap of melody that stumbled, rose, and almost held together. Maybe she was sad about Grandpa Russ, too, he said thoughtfully, voice small. You think he'd be proud of you? Matt swallowed, I hope so. Truth was, he'd spent half his life worrying over that question. Now it sat lighter on his shoulders. But I know I'm proud of you. Heck, it took guts helping with all this. A shy light flickered on Jamie's face. I like it here, Dad, even if the Wi-Fi's slow and the chores are forever. Matt chuckled, ruffling his son's hair. Place doesn't need to be fancy to count for something. A flock of crows cut across the falling light, black shapes dissolving into the woods. Matt closed his eyes for a breath. I was scared coming back, he admitted, to the old cabin, to being seen as a stranger by everyone. Jamie squeezed his hand, determined now. You're not a stranger, not to them, not to me. We're Millers, right? Matt's heart squeezed. Yeah, Jamie, we are. As the dedication ceremony drew near, volunteers strung bunting along the porch, veterans hung flags, and townsfolk with no stake but goodwill brought pies and folding chairs. Word had gotten out further than Matt could have guessed. The Miller miracle had become a headline, a chapter in small-town lore. Even the sheriff who'd nearly auctioned the place off showed up, looking sheepish. Governor Holloway herself arrived in a whirlwind of aides, making a show of shaking hands and pausing before the glass exhibit at the hall's entrance. Cameras flashed as she studied the shell, the tiaras, the photograph of Big Russ. So much history in one family, the governor remarked, turning to Matt. You did your ancestors proud, and the veterans' retreat extraordinary. Tell me, what made you choose service over comfort? Matt hesitated, aware of every eye. He glanced at Jamie, then at the crowd. I guess I figured if something that old and battered could become treasure, maybe so could we, he said. This place isn't just for my family, it's for anyone who ever wanted a second shot. A ripple of applause, genuine and warm, filled the space. Jamie was called forward, bashful but sure, to recite the mission of the retreat. His voice, high yet sturdy, carried over the crowd. We're here to help each other. When you're hurt or alone, you can come here. It's for everyone, because sometimes family isn't who you start with, but who you find." At that, even the steeliest officials dabbed their eyes. Afterward, when the last shreds of sunlight faded and only the porch light burned, Matt found Frank standing alone by the trailhead, hands in his pockets. "Got something for you, Matt," Frank murmured, passing over an old manila envelope. "From Uncle Henry's box. We missed it during the sorting. Thought you should be the one to see." Matt turned it over in the dim light, opening slowly. Inside was another letter, edges brittle with age. "For the one who stands last at the door. Families where you lay your burdens down and pick up another's. If you have the courage to let go of what doesn't belong to you, you'll always find more worth than gold. Pass it on. Henry Parsons Miller." Matt swallowed, reading it twice, 3 times. All this way, and the old man's lesson still held steady as a beam in a storm. "Looks like he was talking straight to you," Frank said quietly. "Feels that way," Matt agreed, folding the paper with reverence. That night, when all but Shadow remained and Jamie slept curled in his bunk, Matt sat with coffee by the fire. He traced the grain of the broad old table, its surface etched by the hands of every generation before. Listening to the sighing boughs outside, he allowed the day to replay in memory, the close calls, the mercies given, the slow healing. He understood finally what it meant to build not just for oneself, but for everyone carried forward along the way. Some inheritances were made of wood and stone and gold. Some were born from the choice, again and again, to let anger go. He lifted his cup to that notion, and to the family he was making broken, mended, and proud. The world could keep its crowns. What mattered was here, laughter and work and the freedom to hope again. Above him the old sign still hung, Prospector's Dream, no longer a warning, but a promise born from all they'd dug up and let go. "If you ever lose your place in the world," Matt mused, "maybe what saves you is not what's given, but what you choose to give back." The fire crackled, the night settled gently, and for the first time in a long time, peace lingered at the threshold, welcome as morning.